Hey everyone, today I'll be turning these three base plates into three Clone Wars MOCs. Each one's going to have a unique identity and they all turn out pretty good, so make sure to stick around till the end to see them fully complete. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's grab our first base plate, and of course the first thing you're going to need to do when starting a MOC, or at least the first thing I like to do, is add a border. With a border on, we can get building. Now that that border is included though, we're going to have to put some bricks on the bottom. That way we can get the build above the edge of the border, or at least sitting more flush with it. For this, I just use whatever bricks I've laying around. All this is going to be covered up and it's just going to be scaffolding for the real build. You'll notice on this one, I do leave a couple areas kind of open. It's a patchy foundation, and that's because I actually plan to put some kind of cracks in this floor and actually carve down into the bricks. So I need some open space to be able to do that later on. However, with a good foundation built, we can move on and start to place those top pieces. Now for this MOC, I'm wanting to do some kind of Mandalore build, some clones maybe being attacked by a Death Watch soldier, something like that. So I'm going to use a lot of gray to cover this base. With those in, let's add in some dark gray bricks down in that crack I have left open. The dark gray is going to be a great offset from the light gray on top. It'll make that crack pop a lot more and add just that much more detail to this build, as well as some variety in the colors. That's just a few pieces, however. Let's get moving on to the rest of this top. Like I said, we're going to add some studs here and different pieces to kind of scuff up the top. It shouldn't be a perfectly smooth surface, so my build's going to reflect that. You don't want to go overkill with it though and just make the whole thing a mess, full studs. How I like to do that process is just put these studded pieces down first. That way I can pepper a couple in here and there, and then I can fill in around it. It makes it a lot easier rather than trying to do it all at once, tiles and studs. This way you make sure you're kind of placing them deliberately, and then you can place the tiles and other pieces around it. Adding more dark gray in this build is also going to be a big help. Again, we want some color variation in this build. I know there's already a lot of light gray, and there's definitely going to end up being even more, but we want some dark gray in here to offset that. So you'll see me pepper in a few pieces like that here and there, as well as some different pieces to try to break it up and create a little more variety to this build and this surface. They're starting to get a pretty good look here, a good mix of all the pieces, a nice roughed up surface, but not too rough that it still ties in with those tiles in the middle. I even placed my clones in there when I was done to kind of check it out and see how it's all looking, make sure it works, and yeah, I think we're working pretty good here. And we can only elevate this MOC from here. The cracked area came together very well. The dark gray works really good, sprouting out of that hole, kind of looks like a war-torn battlefield, like Mandalore is in the Clone Wars. Back to building, however, I wanted to add some elevation to this build. As of right now, it's literally just a flat gray slab. To make this little feature, I just used some bar pieces going all the way up into some tubes that then connect to the studs on top of these plates that make this overtop canopy. I also tried to integrate some more bars up top too, giving it a more shriveled and, dilapidated appearance, as if rebar or something is coming out of this top. Now we have a pretty good look here, a couple different pieces on top, giving it a nice profile. I like it. I will say though, I don't think it's quite complete. That still might be something we have to come back to. Anyhow, for now though, let's go ahead and move on. As I was working on the top, the floor still lacks some detailing. I felt like it needed something else, so I added some more bar pieces down there, similarly to like I did up top. However, down here they're going to look more like pipes or something of that sort running along the floor. For that, I just used a couple of these I whipped up really quick, just an assortment of random bars, Technic pieces, thrown together that I can throw on top of the surface. And I really like how they turned out. It actually adds quite a bit to the MOC. It adds some more elevation like I was talking about earlier, not a whole lot, but some variety to that walkway, particularly the one that crosses across the middle. It helps incorporate that smoother area into the rest of this build, which somewhat's getting a little busy compared to the middle. Another similar detail I wanted to add is some sort of crate. In Star Wars, you always see random crates sitting around, whether it's weapons, energy, or some kind of oil, who knows what it is. Doesn't really matter, but for this, I'm going to build my own little piece and kind of stick it in there. I actually really like this design I came up with and might use it in future MOCs. It's just a couple 2x2s with some round little studs, and then on top you have the rounded pieces. But it looks quite well and fits in very good to this MOC. And again, add some more elevation to that floor. Now with that complete, I think it's time to step back from the light gray and dark gray colors. There definitely needs to be something else added here. It's just way too bland at this point. Now, of course, we're working on Mandalore though, so grays are kind of a given. So figuring out what you're going to add to spruce up these colors is a bit difficult. However, adding some more muted colors will still fit the scene. The first piece I throw in there is a leaf piece that's colored olive. I threw that in down below and it made a big difference all by itself, so I knew I had to add more of it somewhere. The canopy actually ended up being the perfect place to add some more. So I threw a couple tiles up there, as well as a few other darker pieces that work much better with that olive color, creating a much more dynamic look and an overall much better look for that top canopy. Those dark gray grape pieces work very well on top, especially combined with that olive color, and it actually made quite a big difference. However, I still feel like we need to add one more color, so I just pepper in a couple 1x1s of this dark sand color. Kind of just looks like some dirt hanging around in a few areas. With all that in place, I think we actually have a completed MOC that looks quite compelling. Those colors and those last pieces really sold the scene. So it's time to add in those minifigures. Let's start with the clones. This first guy is going to be looking up towards the Mandalorian, jumping down on him. The second one is going to be looking off into the distance. Then finally placing in the Mandalorian on the top of the canopy with the small clear piece below his feet. That way it looks like he's flying around using his jetpack. And there we have one MOC down. Quite a good looking MOC too. It actually came together quite well. Those final stages were a big impact. Adding those extra colors, those bars, and that crate really made it something else. As before, it was looking very plain and barren. Not to mention, once you get the minifigures in there, it just brings it to a whole new level, especially with the multi-level fight between the Mandalorian and the clone. So far, I think the other two are going to have a tough time beating this one out as my favorite, but we'll see. Let's keep moving on. With the second MOC, we're going to start just like the other one, putting on a black border. And once again, just like the other one, we're going to be adding in a underneath foundation. This second one, I want to make some sort of beachy scene. I feel like a clone trooper just patrolling the beach is probably the best look here. As if I'm going to make a beach, about half of this MOC has to just be water, so that already cuts down a lot of real estate, so having a versus scene I just don't think is an option in this small of a space. You'll notice this foundation is a bit lumpier than the last one, and that's because I want it a bit elevated. The one side is flat, that's for the water, but the other side is going to be for the shoreline. So that side I wanted some difference in elevation because I want it to climb up pretty steep. With a good sturdy foundation, we can start working on the actual terrain of this build, and I'm going to start with the shoreline. The sandy beach is probably the most important part. This is the shape I need to get right. So we're going to start here and then work out. Nothing too complicated going on here. I'm just really laying those bricks down, the light tan, on top of the pieces I already made. The shaping is somewhat already there from those pieces down below, so there's not a whole lot of work I have to do here besides placing bricks and somewhat working out exactly how I want it to look. It's especially tricky in this scenario because you want it to blend nicely with the grass. You want it to cut back slowly and kind of gradually work itself in. Once I have a good look for that shoreline, we're just going to quickly throw in a bunch of green pieces for the back. Nothing too fancy or too crazy here going on. It's just some green bricks on the back. With all that in place, before I go any further with some deeper details, let's just throw in the ocean, throw in that nice blue tile, and give it that oceany look. That way we can kind of get the full experience of what this is looking like. That way when we go to add the details, we can tell exactly what we're getting into. Now seeing it all together, the first place I want to start is the beach, adding some rocks to it, adding a different color. Again, it's very important. Even here where we have three very different tones, adding those rocks is going to be a great touch of color, as well as giving the grass and the beach some sort of common ground. And I guess I should use the term rock slightly, as I'm not doing much actual rock work, not too many slopes, just some like cheese slopes, and then a few of those smaller stud pieces. And then once I have all of those down, I go in with some more tan pieces. A couple 1x1s, both studded and tiled. Adding those around to, again, just add some different depth to this beach, make it look a little more rough. And finally, while I like how it's shaping out, there definitely needs to be something else here. So I added some trees. Not a very crazy design or anything, but just something to add to the build. Kind of like with the last mock, adding some elevation to it and giving your eyes something different to look at. The trees themselves even have quite a bit of differentiation in them, with their own elevations of the leaves going from up to down. It's actually a surprisingly really good look, and it fits this rocky beach extremely well. And we seem to be at the point where I can add in a minifigure. For this choice, I felt like the heavy 500 first clone was the best pick. I don't know why. When you think about scouting, though, I feel like this guy just fits the bill. He's all decked out with heavy equipment and ready to go. So he's going to look the best for this beach. And altogether, it's a nice little scene. I do wish I had more room to work with, however. When the ocean takes up half of your build, it's just blue tile. It's not bad, but I do wish there was more room to play around with, add a bit more of a scene to this build. Nevertheless, though, I do kind of like how it's a bit of a calmer scene. Let's move on to our final build, build number 3. You're used to this by now, but we're going to add a black border in there before getting started on anything else. With that in place, I'm going to place in this speeder first before we get building anything. My idea for this build was going to be a crashed speeder, a clone on his last limb being attacked by some droids. So placing in the speeder, it is going to fit, however it is going to take some work to do. I'm definitely going to have to maximize the space here as there's not a lot left to work with. I wanted to start in the center where the speeder is going to be. So that crash site, I added a bunch of brown in the middle, rough looking at different terrain levels, and gathered more in the back towards the rear of the speeder and then less in the front, kind of fitting the profile of the build. With that at a point I like, I'm going to go ahead and add in the green around it. This is just going to be a basic kind of foresty build, and then the speeder crashed in the middle, so nothing too extreme here, but let's just add in those green pieces around it and see where to go from there. There's not going to be any room to add trees, so I'm just cutting that out of my mind right now, and we're just going to go ahead and jump into all these details on the floor. I'm going to add a couple more brown pieces around the crash site, that way it looks like dirt was thrown up. That somewhat takes shape in the form of little round studs, some cheese slopes, stuff like that, or just maybe a couple plates on top of the greenery. Whatever it takes to accomplish that crashed look. You'll notice that's also kind of why I have the elevation raised at certain points around this crash site. Now placing that speeder back in, we have a very good mock showing up on our hands. I like the profile and the outline, I think it's lining up very well. Now let's just add those extra details on the grass and see how that turns out. So we're just going to add foliage everywhere you can imagine. I want this place to be full. One of my favorite techniques I always love to point out is using the leaf pieces on top of the grass stalks, keeping them in place but also acting as very vibrant and big bushes. It's a look I really like. That greenery shaped out really well, exactly how I was hoping. So I think we can go ahead and add the speeder in. I just broke it apart in a couple areas, but enough to make it look like it's not together. One more important step to this though is adding some flames to it, making it look like it was just recently shot down. For this I'm not too direct, I placed in a couple pieces in place, but otherwise I just dropped flame pieces on top. I really like adding those pieces in, it actually made it quite a bit more lively, and I feel confident we can add in those minifigures now and call this a completed mock. Firstly, let's lay in this clone down below by the edge of the speeder. Then I want a droid right on top of him and on the opposing corner, looking like they're both coming in surveying after they just shot it down. And stepping back with all those in place, it's a nice looking mock. A little crammed, but it almost works in favor as it kind of fits with all that foliage down below, feeding into the style of the mock. My favorite part though is definitely the flames. They look great on the front of that broken speeder. There we have it, all 3 mocks are complete. And I gotta say, I quite enjoy each one of them for different reasons. If I had to pick a favorite though, I'm definitely going with the Mandalore one. Yes, the gray is a little annoying and a little plain, but those extra pieces I added in, the olive pieces, the dark tan pieces, and then even that canopy giving it some different elevation and a totally different style. All of that works together extremely well. Plus, it has a Mandalorian in it, which just looks really cool, jumping off the top of that. And then the clone looking up above. It's a great little scene. And even the second clone in there looks like he's engaged in some sort of battle off in the distance that you can't see. Kind of makes you wonder what's out there. I just like it a lot more, and I think this one more than any of the others has much more action to it, making it a bit more fun to look at. Not that the others don't have good things about them. The speeder build, like I mentioned, I really love the fire and the crashed look. For some reason, crashed vehicles is just really cool. Seems like there's actually a story there. And then finally, the beach build. I really like it, but I just wish I could have done more of it. It feels too small and is a build better served on a bigger base plate. But those are all my opinions. Let me know what you guys thought. Which mock was your favorite? Let me know down below. Like and subscribe for more. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.